All right, gentlemen, pull up a chair, grab your coffee or something stronger. I won't judge because today we're talking about something a lot of you have thought about at 2 a.m. and never actually looked into picking up and living somewhere else. Somewhere your dollar doesn't just survive, it throws a party. Everybody assumes moving to Europe means Paris or London glass towers, tourist crowds, and rent that costs more than your first house did. So most guys glance at the numbers, wince, and go back to watching the game, case closed, dream shelved. Except here's what nobody tells you. Scattered across this continent are cities where the average paycheck clears 3 grand a month, rent stays under $1,000, and the day-to-day quality of life makes those famous capitals look overpriced and overrated by comparison. These cities don't make the highlight reel because they're not flashy. They're just quietly, ridiculously good. Today, we're ranking the 11 best cities in Europe to actually live and work in for 2026 based on real salary numbers and real rent numbers, not tourist brochure nonsense. Stick around to the end because the city that takes the top spot is probably not the one you're expecting, and it might just be the one that gets you looking up flights before this video is even over. Let's get into it. Number 11, Riga, Latvia, the Baltic city flying under everyone's radar. Let's kick things off with a city most guys couldn't point to on a map, and that's exactly why it belongs here. Riga is the largest city in the Baltics, sitting on the Daugava River just a few miles from where it empties into the Gulf of Riga. It's got the biggest collection of Art Nouveau buildings anywhere on Earth, entire blocks of ornate, hand carved facades that architecture nerds fly in from other continents just to photograph, and you'd be walking past them every morning on the way to grab coffee. The old town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, all cobblestones and church spires, small enough to walk end to end in 20 minutes, but packed with enough beer halls, markets, and hidden courtyards to keep you occupied for years. Financially, Riga is one of the most underrated deals on this entire list. Average take home pay runs $1,300 to $1,700 a month. A one-bedroom apartment in the city center runs just $550 to $850. Some of the lowest rent numbers of any capital city in the EU, monthly costs outside of Rentland around $600. Latvia uses the euro, so budgeting is simple, no currency conversion headaches. The job market leans toward IT, logistics, and finance, with a growing outsourcing and shared services sector as companies discover the same thing you're about to skilled English speaking talent at a fraction of Western European salary costs. The Riga Central Market, housed in a set of converted Zeppelin hangars from the 1930s, is one of the largest and oldest markets in Europe. And a Saturday morning walkthrough, it will run you about $5 for enough smoked fish, fresh bread, and local produce to last the week. The trade-off is the same one you'll find throughout the Baltics winters, run long, dark, and cold. And the city is small enough that nightlife and entertainment options thin out compared to bigger capitals. But for rock bottom rent, stunning architecture, and a Baltic Sea coastline 20 minutes away, Riga is one of the best kept secrets in Europe. Number 10, Bratislava, Slovakia, the city nobody's fighting you for. We're kicking things off in Slovakia's capital, a city sitting right where Slovakia, Austria, and Hungary practically bump elbows. That means you can hop a train and be in a completely different country in under an hour, no airport required. Vienna's about 60 kilometers away. Budapest is about 200. You're basically living in the middle of a European road trip map. The old town is small, walkable, and full of medieval buildings, pastel storefronts, and outdoor cafe tables that fill up the second the weather turns warm. Here's the money talk. Average take-home pay lands around $1,500 to $1,900 a month. A one-bedroom apartment right in the city center runs $750 to $1,050. Add another $650 or so for everything else, groceries, utilities, going out, and you're living comfortably on a fraction of what you're used to spending back home. Slovakia uses the euro, which keeps your budgeting simple. No currency conversion math required. Jobs here have been picking up steadily too, IT, finance, engineering, as international companies set up regional offices to take advantage of the lower costs. English is common among the younger crowd, less so with the older folks, so learning a handful of phrases goes a long way. The trade off, it's a smaller city, under 500,000 people, so don't expect Vegas level nightlife. But if what you want is cheap, central, walkable living with three major capitals within arm's reach, Bratislava punches way above its weight. Number 9, Warsaw, Poland, the comeback story with a paycheck attached. Warsaw's got a history that'll stop you in your tracks. Flattened almost completely during World War II, then rebuilt brick by brick, piece by piece, which is why the old town looks almost too perfect. It is, in a sense, it's a meticulous reconstruction of what was lost. Wrap that historic core in glass office towers, busy business districts, and one of the strongest growing economies in Central Europe, and you've got a city that respects its past while sprinting toward the future. Take-home pay for professional roles runs $1,900 to $2,300 a month. Higher in tech, finance, and consulting. A one-bedroom apartment downtown will run you $850 to $1,300. Everything else outside rent runs around $700 a month. Poland's flat tax rate on lower income brackets means you keep more of what you earn compared to a lot of Western Europe. Big name companies have already figured this out. Google, Samsung, Goldman Sachs all have serious operations here, drawn by skilled talent and lower costs. Public transport is cheap and reliable, and the food scene has quietly leveled up in the last few years. Winters are long and cold. No sugarcoating that. But for a guy who wants real career opportunity paired with a cost of living that doesn't eat his whole check, Warsaw is one of the strongest values on the continent. Number 8, Athens, Greece, where history is just part of the commute. Athens is a city where you don't visit history, you drive past it on the way to the grocery store. The Acropolis has been sitting up on that hill for over 2,500 years, and locals glance at it the way you'd glance at a water tower back home, except it's one of the most jaw-dropping structures ever built by human hands. The Aegean Sea is 20 minutes from downtown. On a weekend, a ferry gets you out to the Greek islands in a few hours. Life moves slower here, built around good weather, good coffee, and conversations that aren't in any rush to end. Financially, Athens is one of the better deals in Western Europe. Net salaries for professional jobs run $1,300 to $1,600. A one-bedroom apartment runs $550 to $850. Monthly costs outside of Rentland around $750. That combination has made Athens a magnet for remote workers, especially since Greece rolled out a digital nomad visa that lets foreigners live there while working for companies back home. There are real trade-offs. Unemployment runs above the EU average, bureaucracy can be sluggish, public services are stretched thin, and the public healthcare system has its limits, though private care is widely used and still affordable by Northern European standards. But for a guy earning remote money and wanting sea views, ancient ruins, and sunshine most of the year, Athens is tough to top. Number 7, Tallinn, Estonia, the most digital country on earth. In the 1990s, Estonia did something almost nobody else in Europe even attempted it, moved its entire government online, taxes filed in minutes, a company registered in an afternoon, medical records pulled up from anywhere. Even voting happens online. This wasn't tech for tech's sake. After breaking away from the Soviet Union, Estonia had limited resources, So building digital infrastructure was faster and cheaper than rebuilding everything the old-fashioned way. Decades later, that gamble turned the country into one of the most advanced digital societies on the planet. The capital, Tallinn, sits on the Baltic coast and blends startup energy with a medieval old town that looks frozen in time, cobblestone streets and stone towers, a few minutes walk from co-working spaces and tech offices. A one-bedroom apartment runs $750 to $1,050. Monthly costs outside rent land around $700. Average salaries run $1,600 to $2,100, with tech and startup roles paying considerably more. Public transport is free for residents, and as an EU and Schengen country, Estonia uses the euro. Winters are long, dark, and cold. That's the trade-off. But for anyone working in tech or remote roles who wants an efficient, modern, low-friction lifestyle, Estonia is hard to beat. Number 6, Budapest, Hungary, 2 cities, one incredible deal. Budapest used to be 2 separate cities. Buda and Pest merged into one back in 1873. Buda sits up on the hills on the west side of the Danube, quieter, residential, home to the royal palace, and a fortress terrace overlooking the whole river. Pest spreads out flat on the east bank, dense and lively, packed with coffee houses, ruined bars carved out of abandoned buildings, historic synagogues, and some of the best Art Nouveau architecture in Europe. The Sechenyi thermal baths hold up to 6,000 people at once and have been open since 1913. An entire afternoon planned for the price of a museum ticket. The Great Market Hall has run out of the same iron and glass building since 1896. Average take-home pay runs $1,300 to $1,700. A one-bedroom in the city center runs $650 to $950. Monthly costs outside housing land around $650, one of the lowest numbers on this entire list for a capital city with this much cultural weight. Hungary's flat 15% income tax is one of the lowest in the EU, and workers under 25 get additional tax breaks. The job market covers finance, tech, shared services, and manufacturing, with a growing number of international companies setting up shop. Worth knowing, Hungary's political direction is something some residents track closely and others tune out entirely. Worth doing your own homework on before committing, especially if that kind of thing matters to you. For history, culture, and a weekly soak in a 100-year-old thermal bath, Budapest delivers a lifestyle most capital cities can't touch at a price most capital cities can't touch either. If you've made it this far, you're clearly serious about this. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Next week, we're breaking down the best European countries for residency visas in 2026, and trust me, you'll want that one. Now let's get into the top 5. Number 5. Prague, Czech Republic, the weekend trip that ruins you for home. Prague is the city guys visit for a long weekend and then spend the next 5 years figuring out how to actually move to the old town square, the Charles Bridge stretching over the Vltava River, the castle complex looming over the whole skyline from up on the hill. None of that's a postcard. That's just the Tuesday morning view for the people who live there. The Czech Republic runs one of the lowest unemployment rates in the entire EU, a steadily expanding manufacturing and tech sector, and a capital city that's absorbed serious international investment over the past decade without losing the architectural character that makes it one of the most beautiful cities in Europe, full stop. A one-bedroom in the city center runs $950 to $1,400. Monthly expenses, outside housing land, around $750. Average take-home pay runs $1,700 to $2,250, with IT, engineering, and finance roles pushing well above that. Czechia still uses its own currency, the koruna, not the euro, but the exchange rate has stayed fairly stable, and the koruna's strength means your actual purchasing power often beats what the raw salary number suggests. And let's talk beer, because it matters here. This isn't a tourist gimmick. The Czech Republic drinks more beer per capita than any other country on earth, and a half liter at a neighborhood pub runs about $1.50. That tells you everything you need to know about the general cost of living. Healthcare is universal and well funded by EU standards. English is common enough among working age residents that you can navigate daily life, work, and a social life without speaking a word of Czech, though picking up the language changes the whole experience. And most guys who stick around long term say it's worth the effort. Number 4, Lisbon, Portugal, 7 hills, one incredible view at the top of each. Lisbon is built across 7 hills overlooking the Tagus River, right where it opens up into the Atlantic. The city uses those hills the way other cities use parks as the backbone that organizes neighborhoods and gives every walk somewhere worth arriving at. The yellow trams climbing through the steep streets of Alfama have been running since 1901, hauling locals and tourists side by side without much fuss from either group. And the pastel de nata, that famous custard tart, runs about 30 cents at any bakery in town, usually still warm from the oven when you grab it. Average take-home pay runs $1,400 to $1,850. A one-bedroom in the center now runs $1,300 to $1,850, notably higher than it was 5 years ago, pushed up by international demand and a wave of remote workers chasing Lisbon's reputation for sunshine and lifestyle. Monthly costs outside Rentland around $850. Portugal's old tax break program for new residents got restructured back in 2024 into something more targeted. So it's worth digging into the current rules before you build a financial plan around them. The job market has grown in tech, finance, and shared services, with companies like Google, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen running major operations in the city. The Atlantic coast is under an hour away. Sintra, a UNESCO-listed hill town packed with palaces, sits 30 minutes out by train. And the weather runs warm and sunny about 9 months a year, which ends up mattering more to your day-to-day happiness than most people expect before they actually move. Number 3, Berlin, Germany, the city that refuses to sit still. Berlin has spent so many decades reinventing itself that reinvention basically is the city's personality at this point. Split by a wall for 28 years. And once that wall came down, the abandoned buildings left behind became the launch pad for the city's legendary 90s techno scene. Today, it's a hub for startups, creative industries, and tech, and it's still one of the most culturally diverse cities anywhere on the continent. All of that inside a city of 3.7 million people, spread across flat, bike-friendly streets, with lakes that turn into full-on swimming spots the second summer hits. Average take-home pay for professional roles runs $2,700 to $3,800, with tech, engineering, and creative fields pushing above that range. A one-bedroom apartment now runs $1,300 to $1,950. Rents have climbed noticeably over the last decade. Monthly costs outside housing run $850 to $975. Germany's public healthcare system automatically covers residents through employment contributions, and the coverage level is among the strongest anywhere in Europe. The public transit system, trains, trams, buses, subway, covers the entire city for about $93 a month on the all-inclusive pass. The job market here is the broadest on this whole list. Tech, manufacturing, creative work, academia, government, a city big enough that almost any career background can find its footing. The language learning curve is real if you don't speak German, but English gets you through most professional and social situations just fine. Number 2, Barcelona, Spain, where the skyline is still under construction. Barcelona is the city where architect Antoni Gaudí spent 43 years building a cathedral that still isn't finished, the Sagrada Familia, and it's become so central to the city's identity that people barely separate the building from the skyline anymore. The Gothic quarter has Roman walls dating back to the 1st century BC, sitting 2 blocks from rooftop bars that are still packed at midnight on a random Tuesday. The Mediterranean sits right at the end of Las Ramblas. Montjuic rises behind the city, covered in parks and topped with a castle looking down over the harbor. This is a city that's organized its entire rhythm around beauty and outdoor living for so long that it feels less like a lifestyle choice and more like the city's operating system. Average take-home pay runs $1,950 to $2,600, with tech, design, tourism, and finance driving the professional market. A one-bedroom in the city center runs $1,300 to $1,950, and the rental market runs tight. Demand from international newcomers keeps outpacing new supply. Monthly costs outside rent run around $850. Spain's job market runs on a 2-tier system. Permanent contracts come with strong protections. Temporary contracts are more flexible, so it's worth understanding exactly which one you're being offered. Spain's digital nomad visa, launched back in 2023, is still active in 2026 and lets non-EU remote workers live legally in the country while working for employers back home, a program that's brought a steady wave of English-speaking newcomers into Barcelona. Specifically, summers run hot and packed with tourists in the central neighborhoods, and longtime residents develop a sixth sense for which parts of the city to avoid in August and which stay livable year-round. Number 1, Vienna, Austria, the city that wins almost every category at once. And here it is, the top spot. Vienna has been ranked the most livable city on the entire planet by the Economist Intelligence Unit for years running, and that ranking isn't just about pretty architecture. Vienna scores at or near the top on stability, healthcare, culture, environment, education, and infrastructure all at the same time. Almost no other city in Europe hits that mark across every single category simultaneously. The public healthcare system covers residents through employer contributions and provides access to specialists, hospital care, and prescriptions at a level that consistently blows away people arriving from countries where private insurance dominates. Average take-home pay for professional roles runs $2,400 to $3,250. Engineering, tech, finance, and international organization jobs. Vienna hosts major offices for the UN, OPEC, and the IAEA, all pay above that range. A one-bedroom apartment runs $975 to $1,500, kept in check by Vienna's massive public housing system, which covers roughly 60% of residents and structurally keeps rents lower than comparable European capitals. Monthly costs outside housing run $850 to $975. The National Public Transit Pass covers unlimited travel on every bus, train, tram, and subway in the entire country for about $91 a month, averaged out over the year. Vienna's coffeehouse culture isn't a tourist gimmick either. It's a protected piece of cultural heritage recognized by UNESCO, and traditionally, 1 cup of coffee entitles you to sit at that table for as long as you like, no pressure to order again. That's been the custom since the 1600s. The city sits on the Danube, an hour from the Alps, surrounded by wine country, producing Gruner, Veltliner, and Riesling from vineyards that start right at the edge of the city itself. For anyone weighing salary, cost of living, healthcare, and day-to-day quality of life all at once, Vienna is the rare place where every single one of those factors points in the same direction, up. Final word. So there it is, 11 cities across Europe, where your money goes further, your healthcare gets better, and your quality of life climbs instead of shrinks. From the Art Nouveau streets of Riga to the thermal baths of Budapest, From cheap beer in Prague to sea breeze in Athens, this continent's got more affordable, more livable options than most guys ever bother to research. If your city made the list or you think one got snubbed, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Like this video if it got you thinking. Subscribe for more of these every week.